In this lecture, I'll be talking about ASP.NET Core and creating a custom middleware. So here are the learning outcome, how to create a basic custom middleware using request delegate and simple chaining of the delegates with the HTTP context object and the next parameter. And we'll learn the use of run and use extension methods, and this will be all practical. Okay, so no more theory for this part. So let's switch over to Visual Studio. The last time we have seen the configure method, we had a few middleware like developer exception page or exception handler and HTTPS redirection, use static files, and we have discussed in detail about some of these middleware at least. So what I am going to do is I am going to write a request delegate as an inline middleware. Now let's start writing just above the use developer exception page middleware, and I will be shifting the request delegate and show you how the response is varied in different cases of shifting. Okay, so let's get going. So this app object, which is of type iApplicationBuilder. So app dot, you can see there is a run extension method. Now what does it return? This is an extension which returns an iApplicationBuilder. So it adds a terminal middleware delegate to the application's request pipeline. So app.run. Now this will take a request delegate. We'll soon come to that. So this request delegate in this instance, it will be an async context object, which is a HTTP context. And this is a bit of a lambda expression. So I would advise you to go through a bit of some courses on in YouTube or anywhere else in MSD and Microsoft about lambda expressions and asynchronous programming before coming to this tutorial. All right, so having said so, semicolon, and within this pair of curly braces, we'll write await. So this async keyword has to be followed by await keyword in asynchronous programming. So await, we'll use this context object, which I will show you. This is an HTTP context, and async and then await context. So we'll use that object context dot response. It's not request but response dot write async, and whatever you'd like to write here, let's write hello from inline middleware. Okay, and so here semicolon, sorry, there is a semicolon over here. Okay, right, that's fine. So all the squiggly lines are gone, so it's happy. So let's indent it a bit to make it clearer. So basically, when this run extension method is called, a context object is passed, and this context await, this is an asynchronous method. So it has to await on this response. So it writes asynchronously. So whatever within this write async method, it actually writes to the stream on the browser. Okay, but this run method does not write the response immediately because it is an asynchronously fetched. So the thread is not blocked when the application is executing. So till this response is received, it keeps on executing the other part of the middleware pipeline. All right. And then it gets this response. Now let's see what is the effect of this. So Control F5 to run this application. So we get this response from the request delegate hello from the inline middleware. Now, if you're looking for an explanation, can you just think for a few seconds why we got this response? What happened to all the other middleware in the pipeline below this? Now, as I have told that this first run extension method, it actually acts as a terminal middleware, and terminal means it short circuits the rest of the middleware and it returns a response. And since this code is context.response.write async, so it is writing asynchronously to the stream, and none other of these middleware, even up to use endpoints, is getting executed. Even though you are coming up with a developer exception page, and I have got a developer exception thrown. Okay, here change the smoke alarm battery, but this is basically not reached at all. So the request meets this first request delegate, okay, and it changes its track and it gets returned from this run extension method, okay, of an application builder type, and then you get it on the response stream. Now let's see what happens if we swap the position and put it after the environment.isDevelopment block, okay, after the exception page middleware. Now Control F5 again. Wow, now you still get the hello from the inline middleware. You still get the response back from this request delegate. So can you explain? So let's come to the explanation. Now the thing is, although it meets the developer exception page, it calls the developer exception page, but basically for this developer exception page to appear as a response that we have seen in the few lectures before, when we didn't have this request delegate and we were having the rest of the code. So for this to really work, you need to travel all the way to app.useEndpoints, and this endpoint middleware, it uses the map razor pages middleware to map this razor page, and it gets the handler method, which is this one, which actually throws the new exception. But that's not the case. Now, because this is a terminal middleware, it reverses the flow and it gets a response in to the request, and it writes to the stream again. Now finally, if you change the position once again to put it at the end of the pipeline, let's see what happens. So what would you expect? Should it again write hello from the inline middleware, or should it throw the exception page? Because the request is not for any static file or not any particular routing or authorization, but it is meeting this use developer exception page middleware. And since this is the development environment, I have not changed the development environment to any other environment. So do you expect now to throw the developer exception page? Let's see. Wow, an unhandled exception occurred while processing the request. Change the smoke alarm battery. So throw new exception. Now this code has actually the exception page and line number is also written, index.cs, html.cs. Now, if you ask me for an explanation, if you haven't been able to figure it out, so what happens is that this run extension method, or which is a terminal middleware, which has acted as a terminal middleware in the first two cases, is not reached at all. So once the request travels and it meets the use endpoints middleware, it reverses its flow and it never reaches this middleware. So when it reverses its flow, it goes back through other of these middleware, and the exception page is thrown. Okay. Basically, even if you look into this flow of this code, you can see that as soon as it meets the use endpoints middleware, it actually goes to the page handler method and onGet method, okay, because the request was for the index page, because I have not requested any other page. It is, if it is the index page, so it started up for looking for the request for the index raiser page, and so this is the index handler method, that is the onGet method, and it threw the exception as it could not reach this method which would write to the stream. Okay, so in this lecture I think we can basically finish over here, but before finishing I must tell you that we can chain multiple request delegates together with use extension method. There is another use extension method. So run, use, and map are basically the three extension methods to write these delegates. Okay, so here let's see this use in action. And so let's get over here and introduce app.use. Okay, and then again an async call, and this time it takes two parameters, context and the next, context object and the next. Okay, and then a lambda expression, lambda operator within curly braces, semicolon over here. All you need to write is await. Now you can use this next object, next dot invoke. Okay, so what it does is that it invokes the next, that is, it actually goes to the app.run middleware, this extension method. Okay, it calls this extension method. Semicolon over here. Now basically if you run this application, nothing else will happen. This is just for chaining the request delegates that I have shown you this, but let's run this and the output will exactly be the same. You will come up with a developer exception page again. Yeah, okay, so developer exception page is there the same way as it was without this use. So if you just swap over the position again and put it just before or at the top, it will come back with the response, writing response asynchronously. So here you can see that it is exactly doing the same way, behaving the same way as if this use extension method was not there. I mean, all this in conjunction with this app.run block of code is doing, it's chaining the delegates, request delegates. And if you put this on top again, it will exactly behave the way it was earlier without this block. Okay, so if you lastly just satisfy yourself with another Control F5, Yeah, so here you come up with this response back from the delegate. So in this lecture, we have seen what is a request delegate, and we have written two simple request inline delegates or inline middleware with async and await keyword and lambda expression. And I have proved a point that shifting the position of this request delegate bring different results depending upon the flow of request response through the middleware pipeline. So